We should kickstart. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. Thank you for joining us today for the third session of the Digital Governance Guide series. This is the third conversation in a series of 5, where we are hoping to delve deeper into some of the key core principles and programmatic entry points introduced in the digital guides as it concerns the leveraging digital technologies, digital solutions to restore and to sustain core government functions in crisis settings. In today's conversation, we are privileged to have with us colleagues from UNDP Ukraine, UNDP Lebanon, and Panama Regional Hub to share with us some of the unique experiences and solutions, as much as we do not like the term, implemented in their local national context to ensure that the UNDP acted with agility to respond to prevent, to anticipate, and to recover from crises through leveraging digital transformation. One of the key objectives we are hoping to get across with these sessions is to really have a startup opening conversations and to understand better the adaptability and applicability of the solutions of the principles outlined in the guides in a very dynamic, in a very kind of quickly changing digital ecosystem, digital environment we are all in. Without further ado, I would like to invite my colleague Omar Hagne, the Community Manager for Digital Community of Practice, to share with us from CDO's perspective how these resources came into existence, and then Adela Pozdar-Cengic to share with us the overview of the key solutions, key principles advocated in these guides. Over to you, Omar.
All right. Well, thank you very much, SB, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. Welcome to another launch of a UNDP digital guide. And my name is Omar Dan. I'm the community manager for the Digital Community of Practice, and I'll be taking you through a brief overview of the guides and hand over to my sessions, to my colleagues rather, for the sessions. Next slide, please, Helen Sue. So yes, colleagues, indeed, we do have a series of guides that we are launching with the thematic cluster areas. And what we sought to do was identify the impact of digital technologies on these 6 thematic areas, of which governance is one. And what we sought to do with the platform is to kind of detail opportunities and risks for these thematic areas and provide country office examples sourced from, I'm sure, many of you in the call currently under each of the thematic areas. And with this objective, we sought to create a comprehensive online resource to support the integration of digital concepts and technology in the programming work that we carry out. And so last year, we launched the UNDP Digital Guides and announced a series of events to present them to you. And this is one such event. Next slide, please, Helen Sue. And so under the thematic areas, you'll see here the 18 guides highlighted. Again, we've done a few already in governance, and this is the third session that we're doing, focusing on the core government functions and local governance in crises contexts. But you'll see on your screen several other areas where we will also be announcing the launch of guides. And my colleague Helen Sue will drop a link in the chat for you to be able to visit that website and see for yourself the guide in detail, look at the examples that we're mentioning here, and just engage with the guide in general. Next slide, please, Helen Sue. And basically, the basis that we use for designing our programming work, our programming structures, is centered around the UNDP Digital Transformation Framework. This is something that we've invested heavily in and upgraded even as recently as last year. And our work in digital programming, we center it around inclusive digital transformation. But of course, on screen, you'll see the key 5 pillars that we structure this around in people, connectivity, government, regulation, and economy. And so do engage with this as well. We do have a link for you in the chat that you can access to engage the digital framework. But in short, this is the nature of the guides. This is how we brought them together. And with that, I'd like to hand over to our country offices to dive us a little bit deeper into the work that we have.
You muted yourself, Omar.
You muted?
No, I was actually muted. I was actually muted, but apologies there, colleagues. I was just making a final pitch for you to share in the chat feedback on how you've used the guides, how it's helped your work, and what we can do to improve the presentation of these guides. And with that, I'd like to hand back over to my colleague SD, and then we'll also hear a few country examples. Thank you, SD, and back to you.
Thanks, Omar. And I'll hand back to Adela to viciously share with us some of the core principles and risks and opportunities associated with adopting digital solutions and digital technologies in the context of crisis and maintaining core government functions. Over to you, Adela.
Thank you very much, Asdi and Omar. My name is Adela, and I'm policy specialist working on core government functions within the Crisis Bureau. So thank you very much, colleagues, for being with us today. And I'd like to start by setting the scene for this digital guide, reflecting briefly on the global context of compounded crisis and briefly clarifying what we mean by core government functionality or core government function. So we can move to the next slide, Helen. Thank you. So as we know, today's world is witnessing a convergence of interconnected crises that are spanning from violent conflicts to public health emergencies, climate change, economic downturns. And obviously, these crises are affecting lives and they're impeding progress towards the sustainable development. They're posing a very serious challenge for countries striving to sustain their core functionality. And for governments also to fulfill the social contract with their citizens. So this challenge is obviously particularly pronounced in fragile and conflict-affected countries. So when we refer to core government functions, we effectively highlight fundamental functions or fundamental roles and activities that enable a state to govern, manage resources, provide services, and ensure security. So as you can see here, there are 6 of these functions, starting from executive management at the center of government, civil service or public employment management, public financial management, local governance, aid coordination, and security sector oversight. So obviously in fragile and conflict-affected settings, limited resources and limited capacities hinder effective service delivery, and they also hinder sound risk management. Digital technologies and digital solutions can present valuable opportunities for these settings, offering potential avenues for restoring and sustaining core government functions. By leveraging digital technologies, governments can enhance resilience. They can also enhance their accountability and responsiveness, and they can also enhance their crisis response and recovery efforts. We can move to the next slide. So similarly to other digital guides, this guide has 5 building blocks. It reflects on key messages. It also delves into key societal opportunities and risks for leveraging digital technology in the context of core government functions. It then provides a set of programming entry points, reflects on stakeholders, and finally, it provides a set of examples from UNDP practice. We can move to the next slide. And in terms of opportunities and risks, obviously, as I mentioned, the guide explains how digital technologies and digital solutions can boost, enhance, but also undermine efforts aimed at restoring or sustaining core government functionality in crisis. And in terms of opportunity, obviously, data and digital technologies can enable evidence-based decision-making. We know there's a set of tools such as IoT devices, sensors, social listening platforms that can help us understand hazards, that can identify social tensions. Machine learning obviously can help with prediction of crises early on, providing warnings, valuable warnings to governments. And then also once crisis hits, obviously there's a set of tools such as social media, GIS, crowdsourcing that can support a nuanced understanding of crisis impact. Another set of opportunities is obviously related to real-time communication and multi-stakeholder coordination. Obviously, this is where digital technologies and digital tools can be very valuable. A very important opportunity is obviously about government continuity and public service delivery. And I think we all experienced that during COVID. Digital platforms and digital services can provide individuals with access to their vital records. They can facilitate, for instance, application process for financial aid, unemployment benefits, social services, even including food assistance and housing support and relief support in general. Digital platforms can also enhance transparency because they can provide real-time insights in government decision-making and actions. And finally, they can help with obviously resource management and aid coordination because they can help you track resource allocation, beneficiaries, have insights in status of projects, and they can also help with logistical process management. However, digital technologies in this context come with a set of risks, and obviously a set of very important risks relates to limitation in physical infrastructure, digital systems, and implementation capacities. And this is obviously very relevant for the connectivity, but also for the adoption of digital tools, and in particular for resource-limited countries and regions. Another risk relates to poor data quality and integrity, which can obviously impact the quality of our analysis and misguide decision-making and crisis prevention and crisis response. And similarly to other guides, obviously the digital divide is also a very important risk because it exacerbates inequality, exclusion, and it can leave certain populations more vulnerable in crisis. And with increasing reliance on digital solutions, there is an increasing risk of cybersecurity attacks, cyber attacks, and obviously data privacy and security concerns. And finally, obviously, misinformation and disinformation, as digital platforms can be used to deceive the public, erode public trust in emergency response, even incite, induce panic, and impede overall cooperation in terms of crisis response and recovery. We can move to the next slide. And coming to our programming entry point, just before we delve deeper into these three entry points, just to say that obviously ensuring continuity or restoration of core government functions requires a multifaceted approach. And this needs to encompass obviously a variety of strategies and project choices and capacity building objectives. So in this context, digital tools and digital programming can obviously offer a very powerful transformative force and that has a lot of potential. However, what is important to highlight is that digital transformation for this type of resilience should be an ongoing process and not a crisis response tool. And another important thing to highlight, I think, in terms of considerations for us is that digital tools should be means to an end. So we should have a balanced approach in this very context. As mentioned by Omar, these entry points are very much aligned with the UNDP digital transformation framework. So obviously one of them is very much related to physical infrastructure and access enablers, because digital approach to core government functions in crisis heavily relies on connectivity, including broadband, mobile internet, electricity. So robust infrastructure is critical, along with affordability and accessibility of services and products. Second entry point for us that we identified relates to government. And here we have two dimensions. One is obviously one important aspect of digital approach to core government functions revolves around government accessibility, government accountability, and responsiveness. So here, leveraging data, communication, collaboration, and participation mechanism, we can ensure effective emergency responses, multi-level coordination, governance coordination, engagement with stakeholders, and timely information sharing. And as I mentioned already, obviously, the second dimension relates to the continuity of public services through digital services and digital platforms. And finally, the third entry point that was identified relates to people and civic engagement, as during the crisis, digital platforms can support communities to engage, amplify diverse voices, and strengthen collective efforts collective response efforts. So this is it from my side, Ezgi. I hope I lived up to the limited time that I had, and happy to answer any questions later on.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Adela. You did indeed capture a very robust summary into a very digestible form. Thank you. Now, up next, what we would like to continue doing is to hear directly from the experts, from the specialists from Ukraine, Lebanon, and Panama joining us today, and to understand better some of the challenges that they have come across and how they deployed the digital lens, the digital perspective to address those issues, and how they overcome some of the risks, and how they explore the opportunities to help the communities that they serve. And without further ado, I would like to start by inviting our colleague from Ukraine, Oleksiy Zeliviansky, who is a senior ICT specialist at UNDP Ukraine and one of the key actors in delivery of the digital inclusion project there. Oleksiy, welcome. We would like for you to, in the next 7-8 minutes, if possible, address the three guiding questions for today's conversation. One is around the guiding principles that informed the design of your intervention, whether it was targeted at sustaining or restoring core government functions through digital technology or others, and in what context, whether it was in anticipation, prevention, response, or recovery. And then our second question to you is around the strategies you have employed to facilitate citizen engagement and enhance government transparency within these contexts. And also, if you could elaborate a bit on lessons that you have learned regarding the effective utilization of digital technology for resilience, accountability, continuity of public services, crisis response, and recovery, that would be greatly appreciated. Over to you, Oleksiy.
Thank you. I represent digital inclusive, accessible, digitalizing public services in Ukraine project. Since the beginning of full-scale war in Ukraine, UNDP focused on implementing of vital e-services through government portal and associated mobile application. It's called DIA, literally translated as action. Can you please give me permission to share my screen? I will share slides from my presentation. What was the problem at the time? When the full-scale war started, 6 or 7 million of IDPs, internally displaced persons, moved from their homes within days after the start of war. Most didn't have any essentials available, and they were moving to the safer regions of Ukraine. It's 3 or 4 western regions of the country. Traditional public support infrastructure was overwhelmed as all these people tried to register as internally displaced persons, tried to receive monetary support from the state, receive medicine and any other help. Along with this, the register of IDP hardware was unable to handle this quantity of requests, because a lot of people at one time tried to register and tried to provide these social services. So what was our intervention and how we helped to manage this problem? We procured equipment for the Ministry of Social Policy to fix the issue with performance of registers of IDP. We procured server and communication equipment that was installed in the administrator of the IDP register data center and helped to increase performance of the systems. We developed additional functionality for the register of IDPs to implement new services introduced by government. It's a monetary support for the IDPs that are newly registered and that they can receive through several months after registration. And we developed an online public service for registration and application for payments of IDPs. It was an easy-to-use service in mobile application that is called DIA that allowed a person in a few clicks to provide his payment information, to verify where he is located, from where he moved and where is he located now, and to apply for registration and for monetary support in one service. So what were the results of this intervention? New hardware and software of registered IDPs enabled social offices to register applications faster and provide support for more people. Every IDP in Ukraine, starting early March 2022, was registered and received monetary benefits using UNDP-supported software and hardware. And lastly, 1.5 million families registered and received monetary benefits entirely online via this implemented e-service through the mobile application. They had no need to visit a social office and stay in line and to apply in person. What were our lessons learned? If we have a foundation in place, like in Ukraine, we have electronic identification system, bank ID and digital signature. We have interoperability framework, like ability to check information in different registers. For IDPs, for example, it's checking information of registration of residents. We have public registers and established portal and mobile application for public service provision, DIA portal and DIA mobile application it's called. Then you could rapidly address crises using these digital public services. So this foundation is important to move quickly with implementing essential services that's needed in crisis situation. And if you deeply understand the government and within the decision-making loop, then you can rapidly provide solutions without the need for separate coordination process. From the beginning of the full-scale war, we were in contact with our main beneficiary, the Ministry of Digital Transformation, and with our recipients. This is the Ministry of Social Policy and other ministries, to address their issues, to know what are the current needs and to assess what are the problems that we can help with, so that we can address. That's all from my side. I think I will stop sharing the screen and I'm ready to answer your questions regarding this crisis services that we implemented in the beginning of the war, full-scale war in Ukraine.
Thanks so much, Alexei, for capturing the insights and learnings from a very comprehensive and impactful initiative in Ukraine. I'm sure colleagues will have follow-up questions, but I want to make sure we have sufficient time to hear from everyone. And towards the end, we will come to the questions to elaborate further. Up next, we would like to invite Gerald Mora, who is with Panama Regional Hub, leading on the InfoSegura regional project as the assistant coordinator. Welcome, Gerald. And if you could touch upon the same set of 3 guiding questions, that would be great. Over to you.
Thank you, Izzy, and thank you, colleagues. Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to present part of the work carried on in Latin America. Today, I want to comment on the digital innovation in citizen security in Central America and Dominican Republic. Since 2014, we have undertaken ongoing joint work with national and local institutions, including civil society organizations, to improve the quality of data for making decisions. We promote multidimensional analysis and effectively incorporate a gender approach in the information management sector. This is the reason because this key word in the presentation is very relevant for us: analyze, understand, act, and transform. Latin America has been a region where citizen security has been a major concern for the population due to the high crime and homicide rates, distrust toward institutions, and the lack of timely information for decision-making. Next slide, please. This reason has created significant challenges, and the data is the best example for this for these channels. When we work with citizen security, we need to have information. And when you search information, you have this challenge. We identify, disperse, and connecting information both within and between countries in the region. We identify difference between the data source. For example, the data of one crime for one source often did not coincide with another source in the same country. We identify distrust in the institution for the exchange of information, and the lack of data hinder information analysis and policy decision making. Next, please. What was our intervention? We work to strengthen institutions with digital tools that support the data access and contribute improving effective response. Example of this action was information standardization process. To everybody in the institution have the same method to collect the data. Integrate data technology platform for citizen security and justice. Information system and open data portal for citizen security and justice that contribute to transparency. And one of the key examples that we identified was the information visualization tool, because many times the people have the data but don't have how to show this information. In this slide, you have the opportunity to see the link to the principal dashboard that we produce in InfoSegura. Next slide, please. Example about the result. We have different results, but for example, this is one of them. Regional and national dashboard with over 2 million records and citizen security, violence against women and girls, and related factors. We produce another dashboard with over 4,000 records on vulnerabilities on violence against LGBTQ+ population in the country in the Central America. In this slide, you have, for example, the working that we do in Belize to the Belize Crime Observatory, in Dominican Republic with the Ministry of Security, in Guatemala with the Ministry of Security too, and one example of the dashboard with the LGBTQ+ population to identify the vulnerability. Next slide, please. Another action that we produced was innovation platform. This is a data bank for over 1,100 innovate tested experience for over the world that are used to base for discussion and for identify solution. In this link, you have opportunity to identify many experiences to the country have to share and try to share and search in the different topics. And we contribute a total of 20 national citizen security policies, plans, agendas, and strategy in the 6 countries that we work. Next slide, please. In 2023, Central America and Dominican Republic record the lowest rate in homicide and femicide that you can see in the graph in this slide. Additionally, we identified that increased the public confidence in the policy and several countries if you use the Latinobarometer data. Another relevant information that we identified is improve the public perception of safety with the same source. Next slide, please. And what was the lesson learned? In this case, we identified very special the necessity to systematic sharing of information that contribute to transparency, increase the sense of trust in that institution. The digitalization provides the opportunity for institutions to transform and become more effective and incorporate gender response, human rights-based and intersectionality approach. And finally, the credible statistical information is a fundamental pillar of democratic state and is enabled to design, monitoring, and evaluation the evidence public policies. Thank you again, colleagues, for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Gerald. Lots of lessons learned there and a lot of questions prompted. I hope we can have time for those. I would like to now invite Qatar Dara, who is an economist, economic policy specialist based in UNDP Lebanon, who's led the digital socioeconomic impact assessments conducted in Lebanon in the aftermath of the Beirut blast. Over to you, Qatar.
Thank you, Eski, for the introduction. I'll talk about the experience of Lebanon in leveraging digital solutions to provide data for evidence decision making and for definitely for programmatic activities to quickly respond to the blast. Next slide, please. A little bit about the context in Lebanon at that time. As you maybe all of you heard, the blast that happened in August 4, 2020 was a very massive blast, one of like it was equivalent to a nuclear bomb. Some would say that, and it caused really physical damages and human losses, massive human losses and damages to the houses, businesses, infrastructure, and most of the capital was in a way or another was damaged. At the same time, the country during 2020, COVID-19 was still at peak level, and we have very strict measures for movement. Also, at the same time, Lebanon faced one of the worst economic, financial, and social crises that is still continuing till the moment. And lastly, it was a context of political and governance vacuum. The government resigned just after in the aftermath of the blast, and it was a complete chaos. So next slide, please. So what was the reason for this intervention? Of course, we needed to develop like evidence-based programmatic emergency interventions to respond to the blast, but we needed data for that purpose. And having data in that context was almost impossible for many reasons. First of all, because of the spread of the COVID-19 virus, and there was it was almost impossible to have in-person data collection. People who are affected by the blast were evacuated from the area, be it households or businesses. They were all evacuated from most of the capital. Big part of the capital was evacuated, so it was impossible to meet people where they used to live or where they used to work. And also, whenever there are people around, they were either traumatized or they have fatigue from many assessments that were going on. So that's why we opted to have a digital survey among households and businesses to collect data that would enable UNDP and partners, and here partners like local partners like municipalities, and also the government partners, the acting government or the caretaking government, to have information, evidence, so they can do a proper intervention to respond to the crisis. So what we did is we leveraged the social media to have this survey. What we did is like we designed a very quick questionnaire, quick survey for one address to household and another one address to businesses, with very limited number of questions that would directly assess the level of damages that will enable designing a response to the needs of households and businesses. And the survey was spread using Facebook, basically, Facebook ads. And we also we used the sampling, and we tried to adopt a sampling technique from the data provided by Facebook in terms of gender distribution, age distribution, geographic coverage in terms of proximity to the blast areas. So all of that we leverage from the Facebook rich data, and this will enabled us to really reach a broad target of audience in a very short period of time. In terms of 2 to 3 weeks, we were able to get good results. Next slide, please. Okay, so this enabled us to reach more than 5,000 households in, as I said, in like 3 weeks, and more than 3,000 businesses. And we were able to collect data, for instance, for businesses on the impact on the physical damages on the business itself, the personnel who work in the premises, the business continuity, if they are able to continue working or not, their access to services and utilities, type of support that was received so far, the direct and indirect losses, be it financial assets, etc. And also we had like a kind of evaluation of the immediate needs. For the household, similarly, we had information about the household characteristics. We had the impact on the residents, on the people living in the household in terms of injuries, a level of injuries, etc. Where they are relocated to, if they want to come back to their homes or not. Any existing vulnerabilities, like having pregnant women in the household, or people with chronic diseases, people with disabilities, etc. Also their access to the current level of access to services, and the types of assistance that was received, and also the immediate. So we're able to have general idea about what are the needs of these households. Next slide. So next slide, please. So this information were used to design a program which is called the Quarantina Project. The Quarantina is the name of the area which is in the direct vicinity of the explosion, which was heavily damaged by the blast, and that used to have vulnerabilities even before the blast happened. This enabled us to design an area-based approach to target the implication of the blast. An area-based approach means like having a variety of intervention under one umbrella, a regional approach, and this enabled UNDP to work with local government and central government actors on the immediate needs that were classified as shelter, rehabilitation, equipment, and rehabilitation of the shops, psychosocial support, waste and rubber removal, access to health services, access to legal aids, and access to power. We're still working with, of course, at the beginning it was more of an emergency action, and now we are working more on maybe at slow development pace, if you want, with the area. We're still working with the area and with the actors in the area after maybe the rehabilitation or the emergency phase was over. And next slide. Of course, we had lots of lessons learned from this experience. Definitely, such survey is really beneficial to feed into the immediate response in terms in time of crisis, mainly because data collection cannot be done maybe in the orthodox way, in the usual way. So I think this is a very good way to collect data to feed into the quick response. But it has its limitation, of course. It has to be very short, very to respond directly to the crisis, not to go beyond that, and to avoid asking any sensitive information, mainly people when they are traumatized or they are fatigued, they will stop maybe filling the survey. But we're happy that reaching this level that we reach, it means people, they trusted they trusted the institution UNDP, and they trusted that they can declare or state their needs and by their own choice. Also, it is very cost efficient. Of course, it costed much less than having a very comprehensive in-person survey. And of course, at time of COVID, it is more safe to do it this way. There is a need to standardize the questionnaires and the sampling methods for emergency, for crisis context. Because I think it took us some time maybe to design the questionnaire so we can have it to remove sensitivities and to have it very straightforward. So I think there is a need to have a standard questionnaire for businesses and households for similar contexts. And also we learned that there is a big possibility to build partnership with social media. We benefited a lot, as I said at the beginning, from Facebook, mainly in the sampling and maybe in boosting the survey through ads. Also, the data generated was good enough to feed into the design and into the implementation of the programs that were designed and implemented by UNDP, of course, with partners. And it boosted, because at that time, the government functions, and still now we're suffering from almost collapse in core government functions. So this helped a bit to maybe to restore part of the functions, mainly in some service delivery aspect and the decision-making aspect. So I think that was a very good lesson learned. Mainly, as Adela said at the beginning, there is an opportunity to provide data for evidence-based, which is at time of crisis is really may not be seen as priority. Thank you for listening. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Qatar. Shukran for this resourceful presentation of the key lessons learned from the Lebanon experience. Colleagues, we've heard quite rich set of experiences ranging from inclusion of IDPs in public service delivery in Ukraine to digital innovation for more evidence-based decision-making that promoted citizen security in Central America, all the way to digital socioeconomic impact assessments in Lebanon. Now it's time to hear from you. I've already spotted 2 questions on the chat. I believe we received 1 question for Dani. Dani, would you like to come in? If not, I'm happy to read your question on your behalf. Okay, so Dani's question was to Alexei, and he was wondering if it will be possible, Alexei, for you to elaborate a little bit more on the EID, digital ID elements. And if you would like to expand on this further, Dani, we are happy to welcome you. Perhaps, Alexei, you can take the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for it.
So regarding EID in Ukraine, we have an electronic identification system in place that involves digital signature. The digital signature that we have are issued by banks. So if you are a client of several types of banks that operate in Ukraine, you can receive your digital signature online for free. It's also issued by tax service, also for free, and it is available in the mobile application, government e-service mobile application DIA. It's called DIA Signature, and it is applied via this mobile app using facial recognition system. It compares movement of face on live camera stream with biometrical data in the Immigration Service Register. And beside electronic identification system using digital signature, we also have so-called bank ID, bank identification system. So if you have a banking mobile application on your mobile phone, you can use this mobile application to identify yourself in any portal or other government information system. This electronic identification system can be used by government services or government portals and by businesses that can also apply for connection to this system. Now I know that government is working on a question to implement digital signatures that can be used in European services and vice versa, that European digital signatures will be recognized in Ukraine. So trans-border electronic identification use.
Thanks a lot, Alexei, for elaborating. It looks like Danny is happy. Our next question was from Nathan Adir-Parvar, also with the Crisis Bureau Core Government Functions team. Nathan, would you like to come in?
Thanks, Eski. Just a quick question. My assumption is typically that digital solutions for core government functions are normally embraced by government partners. And I'm just wondering, are there any examples where government counterparts or parts of government resist taking on this initiative or these sorts of initiatives? I'm asking really about the case studies. And are there any challenges beyond just, the infrastructure and the technical capacities to manage this that have to be overcome? Some were mentioned before, but it'd be great to tease those out if possible. Thank you for the presentations. It's very informative and helpful.
Who would like to take up on this?
Maybe I can start
question.
and then colleagues can join in. I tried also to provide answer in the chat. So obviously digital technologies in this context come with additional level of scrutiny and insight in terms of real-time insights into government actions and decisions. So, and as you can assume, this is not always welcomed by all the governments or parts of governments worldwide. So, and I mentioned also that it can happen that the government decides to intentionally restrict access to the internet and communications during the crisis and when faced with protests. So obviously, if you want to limit information sharing, if you want to curb protests or cut off communication to specific areas, this can be used as an effective tool. Or if you want to reduce awareness about certain events happening, like election results and obviously unconstitutional change of government. So these are just some examples. I mean, we haven't had concrete examples from UNDP practice related to this, but it is just to say that digital transformation as such bringing a lot of, insights into the government work and adding possibly to transparency is not always welcome by the government stakeholders. But I don't know if colleagues have any additional insights they would like to share from their practice.
Indeed, I think Gerald would like to come in, and up next we can revert to Qatar and Alexei as well. Over to you, Gerald.
Thank you, Izzy. I think it's an excellent question because sometimes it's the first step when you need to working with the institution. Sometimes the institution, like I mentioned in the presentation, the context about we produce the information, I don't want to share the information. Sometimes it's very difficult. And the first step is show all the advantages that you want to get when you working with this data. One example in citizen security is sometimes the first step to working with citizen security is identify what are the problem in citizen security in the different countries. Because sometimes the first big challenge is you don't know what is the problem, in what place, what characteristics, for example, gender, for example, age, and with this information, you have opportunity to identify and promote a political solution very clearly. And this is one of the reasons because it's very relevant to working together with the institution and show all the information and benefit that they get when working with the platform, for example, in this case, with dashboard. Thank you.
Thanks, Gerald. And Alexei, Qatar, would you like to respond to aspects of this question as well? Yep, over to you, Alexei.
Yes, I'd like to comment about examples of governments being cautious in use of digital solutions. One of the examples I had that we have a war from 2014, and at some point, government implemented register of war veterans. And at the beginning of full-scale invasion, there was a proposition to introduce Veterans ID in mobile application service. But this service wasn't implemented because of security concerns. So one of the concerns is security concerns because when person goes through the checkpoint, his phone can be taken away from him, and the person that took his phone can check if it is a war veteran, and it may have a risk for life for this person. And other concerns when implementing services is competition between ministries, because, for example, we have centralized government service portal that is managed by Ministry of Digital Transformation, but the state tax service have their own portal, and they don't want to implement their services on this portal managed by other ministry. And there's some kind of competition, political part in this e-service implementation. And second part of your question regarding problems related, challenges and problems related not to ICT. For me, as a technical person, I think the legal part is the worst, because 80% of problems and 80% of work when you want to implement or change or optimize some kind of a service is dealing with legal acts, and it is, if it is required to change the law, it can take a lot of time, and it's really complex. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexei. Qatar, did you want to come in on this as well?
Yes, I agree with what my colleague said about the resistance from the government to opt for a digital solution. I may add some few maybe other aspects, the issue of corruption, because sometimes using digital solutions or using digital way of providing services could really could in some cases reduce the risk of corruption, and this is something that could be highly resisted by the government. Also, I would stress the issue of information sharing. We had maybe a recent experience now working with working with the government to employ maybe or support employing the biometric tracking for civil service. We're trying to support or suggesting to the government to go to a full solution and use this as a human resource management. They don't want to do that. They just want to track the attendance of employees, where they can do much more with this, such solution. But this means that it will entail they will have to have a centralized database for information and to share information among different agencies. And now still data or centralization of the data is still considered as a center of power for agencies, and they don't want to give it up. So sometimes, yes, they resist some very basic solution which could improve really the performance of the government for things like this power of data or control of data. So yeah, I agree with colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Qatar and Nathan. Hope these were helpful inputs into your question. I see that Jason Le Corbinier has his hand up. Please come in, Jason, and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Ezgi, and thank you, colleagues. Morning. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Jason Le Corbinier. I'm from the country office, the multi-country office covering Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean. So first of all, thank you very much for all of the presentations. Very, very interesting, very insightful for some of the work that we're doing. Particularly great to hear the discussion on some of the issues of transitioning from physical to digital, and some of the things beyond just the technology itself, things like legislative reform, information sharing, and so on. These are really important things, and these have been, for us, a lot of key lessons learned from some of the work that we're doing. My question is on sustainability of the work. One of the major challenges that we've seen in the digitalization space has been the use of proprietary software that tends to be quite costly in terms of the upfront cost, but then also once the projects come to an end, there's often a gap in terms of financing for future credentials, licenses, and so on. So I'm just wondering from colleagues here what your experience has been with this, if this has been an issue, in terms of the software that you've been using, and what perhaps some of these solutions that you've been pursuing in this space. For example, was there a focus more on open source types of solutions and inclusion of future costs in national budgets and so on? So just wanted to get a sense of kind of the experience in the sustainability of these interventions. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Jason. Very spot on question. Would anyone like to take the lead in responding to this? Alexei, over to you.
We have several approaches to achieve sustainability of implemented e-services. First of all, it's the use of open source software. So it will be possible to change software developer, and there is no vendor lock when you implement something. Second is also very important to transfer results of software development to recipient. So they own this software. So this software is on their balance. Next one is use of existing platforms. For example, there are a number of existing portals and digital solutions like mobile application that is already used for e-services provision. And if you implement additional services, so you modernize, not creating something new, but modernizing software, it's also sustainable. And lastly, in Ukraine, we have a government-developed platform for implementation of government registers. It uses open source technologies like Commando platform, and there are a number of teams that can use this platform to develop software. And this platform is hosted by state enterprise, one of the ministries, so it reduces costs for government to own registers and to implement registers on this platform. It is not applicable to complex systems, but basic registers that should be implemented can use this government register platform that works in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexei. Are there any takers for this question? Then I guess we have. Oh, over to you, Gerald. Please come.
Yes, it's a good point, Jason, because it's very relevant in our case. We always involve the institution in all the state of the process. It's relevant because they feel we are part of this. It's not only one product that I receive. I don't know how working. I don't know what's the process. This is one of the reasons, because sometimes when you finalize one product and the institution get this information, sometimes it's not working because they don't feel part of the process. This is one of the lessons learned that I wanted to identify. Always in all the state of the production is very relevant to the institution participate, and they feel part of the product because they feel more comfortable with this. And so this is one of the reasons, because then when the project or the initiative conclude, they continue with them because it's part of them.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Gerald. And perhaps there are more insights to be shared. We'll be in touch, Jason, if we hear from other colleagues in the aftermath as well. I know we are short on time, but I have one more follow-up question, and it's for Gerald on the data innovation and the relationship to kind of improvement of the citizen security situation in some of the contexts in which InfoSegura operates. It's more of a monitoring and impact measurement question. How do we what are the mechanisms that we use from the InfoSegura perspective to attribute the change in public perception or the change in actual citizen security to the data availability and transparency and accountability? And you may have already covered this in your presentation, and if that's the case, my apologies.
Yes. Well, one of the reasons because we attribute this is because the people in general, the population in general, they get more data. For example, when in Latin America and in Central America is very different the possibility to get information. We have different contexts. In some countries it's not easy, but you have more facility to involve the institution and get information. But in another context, it's total difficult. And we identify when you have information and you present this information to the population, they feeling more capacity to identify your problem and to identify what are we necessities in the future. This is one of the reasons, because sometimes when the people have data to show this is my problem, I know what I want to do for resolve, they feeling better, and this is one of the reasons because the trust in the institution increase. This is only one point to mention.
Okay, super. Thanks for sharing that, Gerald. I know we are over time, colleagues, and we want to respect your time. So just to close the wrap up, I invite back Adela, our policy specialist.
Thank you, Esme, and thank you very much, colleagues, for the very enriching discussion. Unfortunately, we're limited in time. So just briefly to reflect maybe on examples, I think for me from the case in Ukraine, it's something that I would like to underline is that, you cannot start from scratch. It's important to have foundation if you would like to leverage digital technologies for core government functions in crisis. And then from our experience in Central America and Dominican Republic, also obviously digital technologies provide opportunities for institutions to transform, become more effective. And in this context, we reflected on the power of data and leveraging those to prevent escalation of violence and prevent, in a way, crisis, and have adequate policy responses in terms of citizen security. And finally, in the case of Lebanon, the power of data, again, when the crisis hit, the government response was utterly lacking, and data enabled UNDP to support government and fill that vacuum which was left, because of the lack of response on the governance side. And maybe some additional aspects just to highlight the importance of sustainability, obviously, and Lexi and colleagues shared a couple of very effective measures for us to consider when we think about digital solutions, because indeed we have a myriad of examples to share, and I think Kavtar could share on aid management software developed by World Bank in Lebanon with huge investment and not being used. So a lot of examples there to share, not necessarily positive. And finally, for us to understand that the governments are not necessarily always open to digital transformation in this context because of various reasons. But it's important for us to consider proper, adequate entry points for our engagement and maybe creating an opening to work on these issues. This is all from my side, just to say that this digital guide is a very basic framing for us. We would love to hear from you if you have better examples, new examples, additional insights that you would like to share. We would like to keep it as a live document on Digital Guides platform and add additional examples. So please reach out if you have additional examples to share. Ezgi, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Adela. No, you said it all. Thanks, everyone, for your generous time, for contributing and listening. We hope to be in touch. Have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you. Take care.